program, Bellamy Brown in the house. Bellamy A+ people, knows this community inside and out. Spent about half an hour with Mr. Bellamy Brown, and then we'll catch up with some commentary from Wilson Ritchie, who is the most prolific restaurateur in Charlottesville. He's got 2 restaurants that he just opened, actually 3 restaurants during COVID, Cafe Frank, South Central, and Dairy, the Milkman's Bar and Dairy Market. So we'll catch up with him and how all his brands are doing. He also, I don't know if you guys knew this, but Wilson Ritchie is the owner of the building where Cafe Frank is located on the downtown mall. That's the old Splendora's. So he purchased that building during COVID, opened a restaurant there, and that's where he plans to retire. So we'll catch up with Wilson on that. We have a lot we're going to cover with Mr. Bellamy Brown. Welcome, NBC 29, to the show. We enjoy when you watch the broadcast. Right down the station. That's my old stomping grounds, the newsroom at NBC 29. I was more on the sports side, though, working under Marty Hutloff, covering the Albemarle Patriots, which you went to?
No, CHS.
I always
CHS.
confuse that. You went to CHS, all right.
Yeah.
Charlottesville High School for Bellamy Brown. J-Dubs, we can rock and roll, my friend, when you are. If you need about 10 seconds or so, let us know. No problem at all. Thank you, sir. Good Wednesday afternoon, guys. I'm Jerry Miller, and welcome to the I Love CVille show. Thank you for joining us this Wednesday. Of course, we're presented by Scott Wagner of Scott Wagner Integrated Medicine. We're powered by Ting Fiber, crazy fast internet, Ting Fiber internet. Both Dr. Wagner and Ting making a positive impact in the Charlottesville and Central Virginia community. So you, the listener and viewer, can participate in the show by sharing your comments in the comment section. We will relay them on air. We will talk with Bellamy Brown in about 30 seconds on the show. We call him a Charlottesville community stakeholder, influencer, a gentleman who's run for city council and is on the short list for the executive director position with the Charlottesville Police Civilian Review Board. We'll talk Police Civilian Review Board today. Welcome to CVille, to the show, the CVille Weekly, along with NBC 29. A lot we're going to cover on the broadcast. Judah Whitcower is our fabulous director. We will also talk Bodo's Bagels and their 4th location, where the 4th location for Bodo's Bagels could be, and Wilson Ritchie opening 3 restaurants during COVID, Cafe Frank, South Central, and the Milkman's Bar, also purchasing a building on the downtown mall, Charlottesville's most prolific restaurateur, Wilson Ritchie. He will offer some perspective on the beer garden concept that we've been in favor of for the last 2 years. Stephanie Rhodes, welcome back from the beach. Hey to you as well. Vanessa Parkhill, hello and welcome to the show. Dan Judd and Nita Davis, hello. Judah, why don't we go to the studio camera and then the 2-shot, and we welcome the dapper Bellamy Brown to the show. How are you, my friend?
Doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing really well. I very much enjoy catching up with you.
Yeah.
Before we talk shop,
Yeah.
how about what's new in Bellamy's life?
Just laying low, working out, trying to stay alive like everybody else.
Yeah?
COVID free.
How'd you manage the pandemic?
I mean, it was, it was good to take a break. I mean, I'm normally like an extrovert, and so just being out and just kind of being away for a little bit, it was good. Obviously, it was crazy overall in terms of people losing lives and getting sick and what have you. But I pretty much stayed, followed the protocols and everything, and got my vaccines maybe about a month ago, a month ago or whatever. So yeah.
How do you think Charlottesville did with this pandemic?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've been looking at different snapshots here and there. I think overall we did pretty well. I think that there was a comparison of the fact that we are next to like a major hospital or near a major hospital or whatever compared to some other areas.
Yeah.
And then no, that was another thing. So, yeah, I mean, I guess overall it was from the vaccination part, it was, it's fine. So I think Virginia has exceeded the 70% mark before the deadline. So
Albemarle County, the most vaccinated community in the Commonwealth.
Yeah.
Over 70%. Albemarle County, number 1 in Virginia. Charlottesville City is number 3 in the Commonwealth from vaccination standpoint. As a result, the New York Times has called Charlottesville and Central Virginia one of the best places to vacation on the East Coast.
Wow.
Because of the safety from the vaccinations.
Yeah.
In this area. I have so much I want to throw. Okay, you know this community inside and out here. So you got so much experience that you can offer. We're in the midst of a council race.
Yeah.
How do you think this council race is shaking out? 4 candidates. I'll dot the I's, cross the T's. You give me your crystal ball, or you give me your John Gruden X's and O's analysis here. You got Nikhil Walker running for re-election.
Yeah.
You got Yaz Washington running as an independent.
Mm-hmm.
You got Brian Pinkston. He ran when you ran, running as a Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
And Juan Diego Wade from school board to council potentially running as a Democrat. A lot of folks see Juan as a lock, and that second spot, perhaps a toss-up. What's your take?
I mean, I think it's, anything could obviously happen, after the summer ends, it becomes a whole new ball game. You get more of, typically in the primaries, you have a smaller focus versus, what's in the General Assembly. I think in the last year's primary, I don't think Vice Mayor McGill got, the top spot, but she ended up with the top spot.
Michael Payne was in the top spot.
Yeah.
And then during the general,
Yeah.
he got the least amount of votes to get on the dais. Michael Payne.
Yeah. So anything could happen between, after August hits and it goes from there. But, I think a lot of people obviously know, Juan and are comfortable with his leadership and throughout the years of service that he's given to the community as well. So I would agree, with that assessment.
Do you think he's a slam dunk?
I would say that he has a strong likelihood, but again, anything could happen after August. You just never know.
The second spot, how do you think
Yeah.
that's going to shake out? Seems to be a 2-horse race. I'm not
Yeah.
knocking Yaz. I love Yaz Washington on the program.
Yeah.
Her at 23 doing this is a hell of a lot further along than I was at 23 years old.
Yeah.
We have the incumbent in the mayor, and I don't think anyone should underestimate the value of being the incumbent and name recognition like she has. And then you have perhaps the polar opposite of her in Brian Pinkston, who's a project manager,
Yeah.
button-down shirts, very clean-cut guy.
Yeah.
I mean, the opposite of the mayor.
Yeah, I mean, you really have to look at it from a political demographic perspective. You have a space that I think the city of Charlottesville breaks down into your Walker, Greenbrier, North Downtown kind of space, and then over to like your Clark, Johnson, Tonsler kind of space, and I think it depends on how you poll well in either space. I mean, that's gonna that would kind of carry the day. Now, obviously, Brian has the benefit of having the Democratic Party behind him.
He's got the machine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like they.
And
kinda,
firsthand. The value of the machine.
I mean, it's all right. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's you get that last push, and you just have to you have to plan for the best, but you can't necessarily say it's a Terry McAuliffe type of thing, which that's another story.
Terry McAuliffe running for governor. So you think he's a slam dunk for governor, basically, is what you
Well,
just said.
I meant from the way it shaped out from the primary with the 60%, and I think that that was expected from a lot of folk going in. Obviously, it wasn't my candidate, but
It's such a dirty business. Terry McAuliffe during Ralph Northrum's when the yearbook came out,
Yeah.
the blackface in the yearbook.
Yeah.
Terry McAuliffe is saying this dude better get the hell out of office.
Yeah.
Now, last month, these dudes are giving each other hugs and shaking hands, and Ralph is passing the proverbial torch to Terry. I know you've got something to say on that. Say that's politics.
I mean, I was very supportive of Senator McClellan. I think that she has done, a great job in the General Assembly for a number of years. A lot more governing experience than all the other candidates. I think when you look at you look at politics as a whole. You obviously have, the Republican Party, and then you have, the Democratic Party. But when you're talking about, diversity and women leading and everything, that's not what shook out in the Democratic primary. So I would say that the parties on both sides, they do have their machines, and you could see in this case that the establishment, obviously lined up behind McAuliffe, just like it did Biden, and you'll have to contend with that until you don't, until something comes up where you don't have. It's not like a JFK moment where, because he went against the establishment as well. You don't have many of those opportunities nowadays. So that's just something that you got to contend with. And again, when that whole debacle from, especially from the Northam side, and then you have
I'm talking
the
your
black
book
clergy.
photo.
Yeah, then you have the black clergy and all those folk that are lining up and supporting behind, versus what the alternative is. That's kind of what you're gonna have until something changes. So it's I'm from Charlottesville. I think it was 42%. Terry McAuliffe did his worst here, and a lot of that was obviously because 2017. So for me, that's a thing. For me, so
That's the thing for me too.
Yeah.
That's a thing. How do you? We'll talk Police Civilian Review Board. We see 2 TV stations and a print outlet watching. I would imagine it's tied to the Police Civilian Review Board here.
Yeah.
Before we get to the review board, how do you think Charlottesville, a city that you love dearly,
yeah.
how has it changed for the better or for the worse since you ran for city council? Because there's been a hell of a lot of changes since you've run.
Yeah, I think that, and this has always been my thing. You have the government that performs its functions, but there are a lot of transactions that happen outside the government.
Okay.
That are always spinning around, and I think you, quite frankly, you see a lot of capital continuing to come into this space.
A ton.
Yeah.
Into Charlottesville.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then you have, you still have that process of folk being pushed out, and then the environment changing overall. You got a lot, the economy. You have to be of a certain level to participate fully in the economy and things like that. So
You're saying it's expensive.
yeah, absolutely. It's expensive, and most of the people who have the money, that's what they're coming back from. They're coming back from New York and California and tech and finance and all these other things, and they're pushing the folk who are working in the restaurants, who are living at the poverty level. I think we had like 17,000 that are in the poverty level. That's good. That's going out. So that's what I see as changing from just the general dynamic. From the politics dynamic, I think that things have become a bit calmer, I guess. There are obviously some areas that we have to work through, but calmer since I ran. So
I agree with that, and
Yeah.
I have a take why, but I'm going to leave that to a side for now. I follow your social media very closely, and you alluded to this gentrification that was happening with the Forbes article that came out about dairy markets.
yeah.
Because you want to take over from there?
Well, I think it's some, and I'm not knocking Southern Development or anything like that. It's obviously the writer who presented it this way, but to argue
Stony Point Development.
Yes, Stony Point Development. Is that?
Yeah, Chris Henry, Stony Point. Yeah.
I didn't want to call out Kristen.
Yeah. Chris is a good dude.
Yeah, he is. Yeah. But it's the way the writer wrote it is she kind of snuck it in there as it's an urban kind of hall, and you got the African American on front. It's like, well,
Angelique, so it was a Forbes magazine article about Dairy Market. Angelique's got front and center.
Yeah.
Angelique is phenomenal person.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great food.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but it definitely was presented a certain way.
Correct. And it's like, okay, well, you show, and I've been there plenty of times.
Yeah, you know it inside and out.
Yeah. So
And
like,
the neighborhood inside and out, right?
Yeah. And so I'm looking around, I'm like, I don't know that this is, and part of that, I don't know if it's tourism or whatever, XYZ, but you can't do that. And I had a discussion with someone, and it's like, all right, so if you define urban as city, okay, fine. But if you're going to define urban as black culture, no, you can't do that. And with the percentage of demographic that exists there, come on, don't.
10th and Page.
Yeah, and in that particular that patronizes Dairy Market itself.
Yeah.
Like, come on, like don't say urban.
So, okay, so the characterization with Dairy Market was it was a great thing to do in an urban environment. Is that pretty much what it was?
It marked it as there's diversity, which there is a ton, and then diversity in kind of like an urban type of setting, so to speak, or it's urban with obviously Angelique on front. Well, come on, anybody, Ray Charles can walk down there and see
that it's mainly white customers.
Yes.
Yeah. Deep pocketed white customers.
Yeah.
I mean, because you and
like I look. So I was
Go ahead. Yeah.
I was walking past yesterday, looking at this clothing store that I guess had just opened up.
Oh, there's a clothing store in there.
Yeah, it just opened up, and so I'm looking through the window because I didn't.
He likes to dress sharp. You can tell. You can tell. You always dress sharp, dude.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I was looking through the window, and there's a sweater on the display. It's a $185 price point.
$185 sweater?
Yeah.
Damn.
So who around there is going to go and be able to buy a
$185 sweater?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you got drinks at the Milkman's bar, and
Yeah.
they love cocktails.
Yeah.
They love a cold beverage.
I've been in the Milkman.
I mean, some of them are $12, $14 drinks.
Yeah. That's like, it's almost like when I had one there, and when I first came back to Charlottesville, like I think coming from DC, it was like, $7 or whatever. I was like, oh, this is great.
Yeah.
Whereas up there, it's like 14 or so. And then I see that, I'm like, this isn't priced for people that, who again, don't have money, don't have capital, don't have these upper echelon jobs and everything to be able to support that, and so it's, you got to really look at those things and not, try to say, oh, this is urban or XYZ. This is not. This is for a specific, you're going for a specific target audience.
Yeah, 100% agree with you. You're a finance guy, okay? You're a business guy here. So I'm going to play devil's advocate with you.
Yeah.
We got inflation going on.
Yeah.
The supply chain is being impacted from a fuel standpoint, gasoline.
Yeah.
Supply chain's being impacted in that $15 an hour is turning into essentially the minimum wage around here.
Yeah.
So when they have staff that they're having to pay that level, they're going to have to reflect those costs with menu prices going up.
Yeah.
Are we just destined to be, because of all these things,
I think you just
DC South?
I don't know if you got DC South because they don't have any go-go down here, but well, they do. I take that back. We got local groups, but that was kind of a joke.
Carl says there's go-go.
Well, yeah, that's why I said we got local groups,
Yeah.
but there's not. I mean, it's not Chocolate City or whatever. There's the vibe is a little bit different. DC is like, it's always type A, go, whereas here you got you got a ton of smart people, but that go type of thing isn't necessarily there. So we're not there yet, but we could eventually get there in terms of like price wise. I mean, you see the homes and everything that are going up. And there are no jobs that are the only jobs that are being built are the data science jobs, finance jobs, tech jobs. Those aren't for your
Locals.
yes.
Yeah.
So
Born and raised.
yeah. Unless you have.
How do you fix it?
You have to create more jobs. You have to
Yeah.
create more jobs that, and this is one of the things that we talked about when I was running, is like this middle class space is missing out on a lot of it, and you can't even. And you say that that's a problem in and of itself. So if you just look at the middle class space and say there's not enough there, what about the people that are way down here, 17,000? And so we have a huge problem, and you got to find ways to generate capital for other folk to be able to participate in the economy and be able to participate here locally in the community. Otherwise, it's just going to over time. It's just going to drive things, further out.
You got two TV stations, the Seville and the Progress, now watching. Yeah. Kelly King giving you props. Marcello Vieira giving you some props right now. Yeah. If you want to give Bellamy Brown some props, give it a like, a share, or put a comment in the feed. Vanessa Parkhill, hello. Welcome to the broadcast. So let's talk Police Civilian Review Board.
Sure.
Okay, give us the who, what, when, where, why. And then I have some questions for you.
Well, I don't know about all that.
It's been in the news a lot.
Yeah, and this well, so my purpose for wanting to really talk about this is because I think there are some misconceptions out in the community regarding the board itself and what we do. And I've talked to a number of key players, and they have this one or perception that were based on previous experiences. That's not the case right now. And that's basically this anti-police perception, which
I'd say that's the perception.
Yeah, and it's an inaccurate one. And there are a majority of members on the board who are doing solid work for the community from an apolitical perspective, where there's a lot of stuff from negotiations to doing research to talking with legal counsel and all these things that are going into the mix that nobody's looking at, and everybody has the perspective from the outside and saying oh well, this is what it is. That's not it at all. We have not. We work closely with IA. The chief.
Internal Affairs?
Yes.
Okay.
The chief.
Chief Brackney?
We've reached out to the local PBA rep, the Fraternal Order of Police.
Is that Mike Wells?
Yes, Mike Wells is
He's come on the show.
Yeah. Fraternal Order of Police. So we're trying, in addition to, the People's Coalition, members of the community, we're going from all spectrums. We're talking to city council, we're talking to city attorney, all the stakeholders that should be involved in this process. We're out talking to them. So it's not this thing of, oh, we're trying to, bash the police. The board itself is trying to do a good job to create a solid product for the community that won't be politicized, but will be a proper mechanism for folk, again, generally talking about those 17,000 that are in poverty who don't have the capacity to go out and get a public defender or hire counsel when they have a problem with the government, because that's really what this is about. This is about citizens having an opportunity to address their grievances about a government function. And every citizen, no matter whether you have positive experiences or negative ones, you should be able to have that opportunity if you do indeed have a negative one. And so my effort is to, in this particular setting, is to dispel this myth that we're anti-police and we're trying to bludgeon the police. We're trying to create a good product for our community across the board, and that's that's what we're doing.
So the Police Civilian Review Board, in a sentence, does it hold the police department accountable and acts like an independent party to make sure transparency and accountability happens?
Well, so right now, those are negotiations that we're having. We're in the process of, drafting a new ordinance for council's consideration. Those are part of the negotiations. We'll have something, ideally out relatively soon. Our council is reviewing some of those things right now. But it's, at this point, we're coming at the ground level, and there is the aim for accountability. There is the aim for folk who've had negative experiences to be heard and to say, raise the flag and say this is wrong. There is the aim to instill trust. You said in the sentence. Sorry.
Yeah, no, but this is good.
Yeah, it's the aim to instill trust that that's been broken over the years. Are we seeking to micromanage the police department? No, that's not our function. And that's there's not an appetite for that, and that's quite frankly, from looking at everything that we've been doing already, that's just that shouldn't be like our wheelhouse. That's we should be there to look at trends as far as where bad policing is taking place, to see if whether or not this particular person has a problem or what have you. Looking at just different things that have bearing on the output of interactions with policing in and of themselves. It's okay if you have again positive policing experiences. That's great. But you can't, unless you can absolutely say that somebody else is having positive policing experiences, then you shouldn't, try and take that person's right to petition the government away. And so that's kind of the area where the problems are, where people identify and say, hey, that we want to focus on for the community.
How would you characterize the dynamic between Charlottesville and the Charlottesville Police Department?
I think
like residents and the police.
I mean, it's always. I mean, it's been it's been contentious over the years for some of them. Some of them, obviously are full supporters. But I would say over the years, those who have been impacted disproportionately, it's not the best. Now, and that's not to say that just because it hasn't been that way, that they don't deserve to have police come out when there's a crime that's been committed or X, Y, Z. It's just saying that, hey, these are some things that we're raising the flag on, and that we would like to be done better from our government, because again, it is a government function.
Second part of that question would be, it seems that everything crescendoed in the country after the murder of George Floyd.
Yeah.
So the murder of George Floyd, defund the police,
Yeah.
got tailwinds and a lot of momentum. Black Lives Matter, tailwinds and a lot of momentum. And when talking with Detective Wells a couple weeks ago on the show, he characterized it as a murder as well with George Floyd. And then he said, this has done an about face with how Americans, a lot of Americans, not Americans in general, but a lot of Americans view the police.
Yeah. So obviously the backlash has gone, across the country, and it's not, there's talk of police departments can't hire folk. That's nationwide as a part of this. And even though you have gun crimes that have risen across the country as well, and folk like to point and say, oh well, this is the reason why we shouldn't have reform. Well, all of those things, typically the reforms that have started haven't even been put in place yet. So all of those things took place under the status quo that currently is. So you can't really knock it from that perspective. But people are recognizing that their government and the form of policing is not always delivering in the manner that it should with regard to that. Now, here in the U.S., it's about, the police academies across the country are about 21 and a half weeks. Over in Germany and some of these other European countries, you got to go and get a degree first. You got to be 3 years on the job. So there's definitely a difference between some of the training and how those things are, how situations are handled. And for me, like, I see that as, being a Marine and being trained to go out and, pull a trigger if necessary. Like, I see that disparity of training as a problem. And I think that, and especially when you have some of the military folk, some of the special ops military folk training, civilian police officers in some of the tactics, you kind of start crossing over into some gray lines, and then looking at some of the police academies where it's, basically some of them are teaching that civilians are a threat, everybody's a threat, and so you get them in that mindset. And what do you expect to have happen when you go out on the street with that amount of training, trying to solve all these, whether it's mental health or what have you problems that are out there? And in addition to the high level of stress, the level of pay, and everything else, and then you're going to stick a gun out there in their hands and say, go out there and serve the public.
Sure.
Yeah.
It seems to me it's almost like a chicken and egg issue.
Yeah.
The pay, the starting pay, is so, I'll cut to the chase, it's low. So if the starting pay for the CPD and the Albemarle County Police Department is low, getting the qualified candidates that we want to join the force is proven to be difficult. So Detective Wells said we need to raise the starting pay if we want more well-rounded candidates that can handle all the shit that hits the fan during a shift or a job.
I mean, that's. I was talking to another police officer friend of mine who's in the training space, and like we did in the Marines, there was constant training on various incidents where it became like muscle memory. To say that, and I'm not knocking the increase in pay, but to say that the increase in pay is going to solve that, that you need more than that.
Okay.
You need there has to be, again, We're looking at 21 and a half weeks average in the U.S. versus, a degree or 3 years over in Europe, where they don't have the same level of, fatalities and what have you. There's actually a Netflix show that I was watching. It's called Under Arrest, and it's based out of Canada and Royal Canadian Mounted Police. And when you see a lot of their interactions, very little of them come and it becomes I'm going to pull my gun or what have you. I was surprised at some of them were there. I mean, they're pretty polite throughout the whole thing. I mean, it's those. So you can't. I can't say that just because you're going to get this new salary that everything is going to change. There has to be more that you're trained in terms of like dealing with those particular scenarios.
Would you trust the police if you were pulled over?
I mean, I've had my own personal experience. I don't know. I mean, I think based on that, I mean, I would follow my protocol, and I'm not, give as little information as possible, and let it work out through the system itself. You don't have to do the police's job for them. If they can't, you can give them your name, your address, license, whatever. But everything else, you do have the opportunity to exercise that right to remain silent. And sometimes when you don't exercise that right, those are the things that can be used against you to take you down. And so it's just like, I don't know. It just depends on where I am, but I never. The times that the police have stopped me, other than for a legit traffic ticket, it's not been something that I've welcomed.
Understood.
So, yeah.
Understood. So you're running for executive director. You're in the running for executive director. This is a paid position, the top position on the Police Civilian Review Board. You're on the short list. You're currently, what's the current position? That's a volunteer.
Well,
chair?
So I am the chair, and with regard to the executive director, I'll exercise the same thing that I do in the meetings itself. I can't, because I am a candidate in this space, I can't comment on it.
Sure.
And quite frankly, I really don't know a lot of the information that's out there. I mean, I think they've done a pretty good job at keeping me in the blind on it.
Why go for the executive director?
Well, because
can you comment on? Can
I can do that.
Yeah.
So I am the chairman, as you said, of the board, and what I see from the work itself that needs to be done, and then you're trying to pull volunteer members here and there and what have you. At any point in time, it could fall apart. And so for me, because I believe in this space, I believe in this in the board itself. I believe in citizens having an opportunity to call BS on the grievances that they have in their government. And I know that I have the capabilities to be able to lead that effort. That's why this is again, in this process, when I, in talking to a lot of the folk, other than the People's Coalition, when it comes to the minority representation, that's left out. And I got a whole bunch of people that I've grown up with that I'm interact with on a daily basis that are like, hey. So that's what it's about for me. We talk about equity and all this other stuff here in this community. It's blah blah blah. But when you look at the actual output, it's not there.
Explain that. What do you mean by that?
It's just it's like, oh well, we're I don't know whether it's Juneteenth or statue or whatever.
Yeah.
When it comes time to bring the bacon home, give something deliverable.
Yeah.
It's not there.
You're saying it's all talk.
It's all talk.
Yeah.
And this is a mechanism that I full-heartedly believe in and know can succeed and be sustainable, that I look at, this is, when I said I'm coming back home to do something like for us, this is one of those things. And so again, I've been at executive level in, nonprofits and Fortune 500 companies and smaller companies. I have the experience to be able to do that. So that's why I combined all that together. And was like, this is, like, I know it needs to be done, and I can do it.
What do you think, okay, this is, I think, a question that's safe to ask and you'd be able to answer. What is the role of the executive director?
So from this perspective, so the executive director is actually would report to the deputy city manager. So it's still an
Okay.
executive branch function. It's still a city hall function.
Okay.
It's not there to set policy, but there to have operational support for the board itself so that it can function.
Okay.
So if you're dealing with things where, just basically your basic day-to-day operation function. You gotta look at, building relationships with the different stakeholders who may not like each other. You gotta look at, getting out and doing, public engagement. You gotta look at, if something were to happen, how do you represent the board or help represent the board from the press perspective? You got to make sure that interactions with legal counsel and everybody else are done well. And then some of the actions from the investigative perspective are still being worked out in the ordinance itself. But there's a ton that's involved in the day-to-day operations. It's going to be that one operations person initially until a point comes to where it says, okay, well, you need additional support. But there's a ton of stuff that needs to be done there.
Do you see the Police Civilian Review Board evolving into a much larger entity? I mean, I could see the Police Civilian Review Board maybe eventually needing staff,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe there's an assistant executive director if you have too much on your plate.
Mm-hmm.
Should you be named the executive director?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do we see it heading that way, or do we see this being strictly like a sounding board?
No. There's the leadership there aspect. It would be a sounding board for
City Hall, council,
no
police?
for the board itself.
Okay.
In terms of hey, but ultimately the board is going to be the one that drives the policy and the decisions. But you would have you got to understand HR employment law, the privacy law, how all these intersect, what are the new changes that are happening in police civilian oversight. All those things have to be understood and given value to the board itself. You got to set up, actual training to help the members be recognized as legitimate, unbiased, well-trained members. So there are different things that are there, but ultimately that position is there to support the board operationally in its mandate and in its function to serve the community in this capacity. Sure, he or she will interact with CPD, with city council, with the city manager, deputy city manager, and what have you. And then there's also reports that can be made, to city council. But ultimately, that function is to support the work of the board itself. So,
How do you think Chief Brackney's done?
I think she's done. Great in terms of her transparency in terms of reporting and some things. I know that I would say 2 years ago there wasn't as much love for her in certain circles or what have you. But I've seen, and throughout this work, that's kind of dissipated. She's like, here, this is what I've done. That police departments all across the country don't necessarily do in terms of being transparent and what have you. If that answers it from a community perspective.
I mean, there's you talk about stigma.
Yeah.
The stigma is there's a little beef, with like her and the board.
No. So in my role on the board, I'm the police liaison. So
Yeah.
I interact typically with the chief. I interact typically with Sergeant Wade and Lieutenant Gore. And so I represent the interests of the board from that perspective. And we don't have any beef. I know that there is historically, sure, there have been tense situations. But there have also been tense situations with city council itself.
Sure.
And I think this
Comes with the territory.
Yeah, here's where the board. It's almost like you have CPD, you got activist community, you got city council, you got other community members, all on the outside. You got the board on the inside that's taking all this stuff, trying to, make sense of it and put out something positive. Nobody likes, what the board, will do ultimately. I mean, there's, because you can't please everybody. You can take these things into consideration, try to come out with a good product and move that forward. So I think we've had a number of meetings with Chief Brackney that have myself and Vice Chair Mendez that have gone well. So and I think in general, when it comes to policing across the country and boards and oversight boards, there's no love here, there's no love there. But one of the things that NACOL talks about is building bridges, and that's what we're here to do. We're here to build these bridges to find out where we can find these areas of commonality to be able to again get this this apolitical piece of legislation mechanism to the finish line, so that folk can adequately, have trust and be able to, knock on the door and say, hey, this is wrong. I mean, there are folk that I talk to and in the projects and Prospect and whatever, who tell me about these incidents, and I'm like, well, why haven't you reported it? And so right now we're doing about, I guess, 40 complaints a year. I would expect that. There could be an increase in that, a slight tick, if there is some legitimacy found to be in the board itself when that does happen. But right now, we're in the early stages. I think people they want things done overnight, and that's just not how it actually works. There are a number of negotiations that affect people's lives across the board that have to be worked out before we're able to get to a point to where we have something that'll be useful.
Our friend James Watson is watching, and he says Bellamy Brown for governor 2025. James Watson, we enjoy your company.
Yeah, James is, and James, again, I'm not.
James is on the board, right?
Yeah, James is. I mean,
he was the chair.
Yes, correct.
Yeah,
James is a good dude. Our board members as a whole are good, genuine.
I mean, you guys are volunteering.
Yeah.
To make the community better. I mean,
but it's not just like volunteering from that standpoint. It's volunteering and being told that you're shit or that you're not good enough,
right,
and all these other things. And I had and so, but we, as a whole, we're still charging forward. And I don't want to start naming off any specific names or what have you, but as a whole, we're doing great things. But I will say, Vice Chair Mendez on our ordinance piece has led that charge, in a big way. And I've said that repeatedly over at meetings. But as a board, this is what we're trying to do. And I always think about this quote from Theodore Roosevelt, The Man in the Arena. Do you know what that is?
No.
All right, so it says, it's not the critic who counts. It's not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly. So that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. You can't,
That's basically saying talk the talk and then walk the walk.
Yeah.
Get to work is what that's saying.
Yeah, it's saying get to work, but also recognize that those who are outside of the arena don't necessarily know what's going on in the arena, and continue to march forward because they're operating from a perspective that's not fully informed. And I look at that, and that's,
everybody's a Monday morning quarterback.
Yes.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so.
Have you thought about this? You ran for city council.
Yeah.
Which is a thankless job. And now you're making a push for executive director of the Police Civilian Review Board. That may be more of a thankless job than the city council job. Now the pay is substantially different if you get the ED position than city council. Have you thought about this, that you could make potentially even more of a community impact as executive director of the Charlottesville Police Civilian Review Board than perhaps you could have had you won a spot on the dais in council?
Well, I have, and that has been brought to my attention. And for me, it's always been, this is, again, like I have background, educational, experiential, that has.
Dude, his resume is perfect for this. I'm going to straight up say it. Your resume is perfect for this position.
Well, thank you. But this is where my heart is. This is what I know. This is what I see. And you have to have. You can't continue to shit on the poor. That's just realistic. And we're not to say that all complaints are coming from the poor, but they're a good majority of them. And if you're not providing them, again, public defenders or folk who can bat their cause, this is an inexpensive way for them to raise a red flag. Hey, we need some help. We've got a problem because the government is not performing its function as it should be. My experience in Fairfax was, left an indelible imprint on me. I can never forget that. I can never forget just how close we are to losing, our freedom. The line is so thin. And so, again, when you're talking about all the money coming in and everything else is being pushed out, don't think that, hey, some of those things aren't happening as well. So you don't need to make things worse for folk. You need to make things better. That's what governing should be about. That's what governing is supposed to always be about, despite our history of everything else. Then fundamentally, when you look at what government is supposed to do, what governing is supposed to do, that's what it's about. It's about making sure that everyone has life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So,
well said. Bob Shada giving you some props. You're getting props from Annie Fisher, S.I. Minor Jr., Ali Bouchateau. Am I messing your name up, Ali? I apologize for that. You have all the media outlets watching you here. Brad Wicker, hello, welcome to the show. You talk about shitting on the poor. I'm not convinced that a few years from now we're even going to have poor in the city.
Yeah.
And you've touched on this already. You talk the data science school that Woodruff is funding with $125 million donation is going to come online soon.
Yeah.
You got Code, the Ice Park Center of Developing Entrepreneurs, is going to come online really soon. Dairy Central, the office space, which is the component of Dairy Market is the food and beverage, and then Dairy Central is the office space and the apartments. Dexcom, and whoever else is coming online soon.
Yeah.
Are we going to have any poor people in this town?
That's what I'm saying.
It's just going to be a rich playground.
That's where the trend is, and yeah.
So how do you keep that from happening? How can we keep a free market from doing what the market does?
I think that pendulum has swung. I think that.
Because there's only so many houses.
I think lip service has been given for a number of years that pendulum has swung so far that,
you can't get to go the other way. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the same.
Yeah.
Because once the data science school is finished, Woodruff is going to funnel the students from data science and keep them in Charlottesville with high six-figure jobs. There's only so many rooftops.
Yeah.
We see what's going on with the housing market.
Yeah. And data science is the number one.
That's where you want to be.
Yeah, and if you're looking at like he is competing against a Silicon Valley or whatever,
he's making his own Silicon Valley here.
Yeah.
Is this Palo Alto East?
I think I read an article that said that I don't know if it was that he wanted to use that term, but there's competition, with Palo Alto here. And I've seen some of the stuff that I guess he's posted some articles on financial engineering and different. I've seen some of those. That guy's smart as.
He's so smart.
Yeah. So it's like this and you just look at the county. Like in Northern Virginia, they talk about we got millionaires or whatever all around there. I've never seen a higher concentration of millionaires
than Albemarle
than in this area.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It seems to me, and then I love talking with you. You're a great interview. We're 51 minutes in.
Oh.
You okay with time?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good.
It seems to me that you're just going to have Charlottesville and Albemarle continue to be super Tony and rich and wealthy, and I'll cut to the chase, very, very white. And then you're going to have the outer counties, I hate to say this, Buckingham, Louisa, Waynesboro, other side of the mountain, that's going to be where the folks that work, keep Charlottesville running, service Charlottesville, living there.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, with the exception of Earlysville. This is what I thought about
Okay.
Earlysville.
I love when you do this. I'm going to adapt to you here.
All right. So when I came back, I was looking at Earlysville, and I was looking at
For you personally?
no, just in general. I was
Okay.
looking at and looking at the city, and I'm like, you out there, everything's spread out. They got all this stuff, but you want to come into the city to have a good time, go to CNO or whatever, and then I can go back out.
Yeah.
That's kind of what you see it as. And then you have, all right, well, UVA is doing well in sports and what have you, and you got the hotels and places to stay on every corner almost. And it's, the writing's on the wall. The writing's been on the wall. And it's, I don't know, it's sad that some things like a trust for, African American properties couldn't have been set up to kind of, mitigate against some of the gentrification and stuff and things like that. But that's what you have. Not everybody who people live out in Earlysville because they want to live out in Earlysville.
Yeah, they want some
But
space.
but they want to come downtown and have a good time.
Yeah.
Same thing. I believe I forget the name out here, but that's what it is. And you can't have that. You can't sustain that for an extended period of time with more people coming in and just say that, everything is going to be okay. No, it's not going to be okay because, again, people are being priced out.
Yeah, I'm going to give you a hypothetical. You would be a hell of a father. I know whenever that happens, if it happens, whenever it happens,
Yeah.
you'd be a hell of a dad.
Yeah.
Would you raise your kids in this area?
In Charlottesville?
Yeah. Would you raise the next generation in the city of Charlottesville? Your offspring.
Yeah, I think that because for me, there's a lot of good work that's still being done. I like, this is my home. I think there are things that I experienced in DC
Uh-huh.
that are starting to trickle down here. So it's like, all right, well, this is just being, there's nothing like new or different from there. I don't like the way that it's gone for, the poor and certain demographics. Not to say that I'm wealthy or anything, but yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of work to be done here. So
I'll read you some comments that are coming in. James says we need to encourage those IT companies to hire and train local folks from within our community.
Yeah.
Johnny Ornalis, like the video, Guadalajara owner and El Mariachi owner. Grayson on Twitter has said this has been a fantastic interview and great insight into the Police Civilian Review Board. It would seem one way to change the stigma is to have more transparency in conversations like this, which is kind of what you're saying, what
Yeah.
the executive director would do.
yeah, and this is, so typically when you have this community's push for oversight,
Yeah.
you're going to have the police PR machine that's going to go out there. You're going to have typically your elected officials that are going to do some pushback. I've never read any stories about a board having especially as they're burgeoning, having that same kind of PR presence. And so I wanted to, given the levels of misinformation that's out there, and I was encouraged by some other folks, like, well, you need to get the message out there differently. This is kind of a push for that. So I'm going to talk to some other folk as well to really kind of say, no, this is what the truth is. It's not this we're anti-police XYZ. We're trying to create a mechanism for the community that can be sustainable, that can be reliable and credible, and that we can help foster that trust again between the community and the police.
Well said, well said. David Bridges, Charlene Baker, all giving you some love. Why don't we, David Bridges says, well done, family. Hell of a job. Why don't we close with anywhere you want to go? I'm gonna get a couple items out of the notebook once you're going here.
Sure.
Show's yours. Anywhere you want to go.
No, I just think that realistically, from a civilian review board perspective, my hope is that the community will give us an opportunity and look at us as, even if you look at us neutral, Just allow us the opportunity to work through this process, to present a credible product, to see how, how the relationships are built, to see how the bridges are built, and help us to move forward. Don't paint us with this, historical context of, oh, we're anti-police, XYZ. We just want to, screw the police. We are professional folk. We grind this out day in and day out. People yelling at us, calling us all sorts of names. We're not doing this just so we can go bash the police.
Right.
We're not doing this for free, just so we can, that's not what it is. So, just give us a chance and let us, do this work in an effective manner, which will serve, not just the community, but it'll serve the police as well.
Dude, enjoy chatting with you.
You as well, man.
Yeah, seriously.
Thank
man.
you. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Anytime you want to come back.
Yeah.
Judy Wade, hello. Anytime. The
Okay.
show's yours. I think you would be a hell of an executive director.
I appreciate that.
I think you would be a voice of reason.
Yeah.
Which is what you're doing.
Yeah, and that's realist. Like I can't tell you. This process. Emotions are going to happen, tempers are going to flare, and you got to be cognizant of that
Yeah.
when you're navigating, these issues, because you got to come right back tomorrow, and it's like, all right, well that's great that happened, but we still got to move this process along. Keep the personalities out of that conflicting space, and really focus on the product that we're trying to create and deliver for the community itself.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Bellamy.
too. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
J Dubs, if you can, actually, we have his email, so we're good there. Just make sure we have the right path for him to go. J Dubs, that would be great. Bellamy Brown, A+ people. We very much enjoy him and appreciate his perspective on today's show, and on, frankly, every time he comes on the show. Police Civilian Review Board, some insight right there from a gentleman who is on the short list for executive director of the Police Civilian Review Board. Couple items I want to get out of the notebook today, and we'll hear from Wilson Ritchie in a matter of moments on the downtown beer garden and owning real estate as a restaurateur. So 2 pieces of sound from Wilson Ritchie coming up. Before we get to that, J-Dubs, and if we can get the sizzle reels ready to go, my friend, the first one I want to play is real estate ownership and what he's doing with Cafe Frank. Bodo's Bagels has said they are going to eliminate the drive-through strategy that they put into play during COVID, specifically on Route 29 by the English Inn and on Preston, those 2 locations. I found their drive-through concept extremely innovative and creative. They did what they had to do to survive. I remember my algebra 2 trig and my pre-calculus teacher were the same person, Mr. Ed Gillespie. Mr. Ed Gillespie had us write the acronym DWYGD atop every test paper. That acronym, DWYGD, stood for Do What You Gotta Do. And that is one of the lessons from school, high school, that has stuck with me the most, and a lesson that I use every day when running the businesses. Do what you got to do. So Bodo's, during the pandemic, they did what they had to do to survive. Now, there were times when that Bodo's drive-through on Preston and on Route 29 by the English Inn, where it got to be a traffic congestion nightmare, spilling onto main roads, causing what I thought was unsafe driving conditions around both locations. Now, please realize that if I'm going to talk about Bodo's in critical fashion, I understand that there's going to be some heat or flack or resistance that I'm going to get, but I call it straight. That's what I do on this show, is I shoot straight. The drive-through concept was something they had to do to manage the COVID pandemic. Was it the safest thing for Charlottesville? It was not. Now they're going to go no drive-through and takeout only. I respect that as well. They're considering a 4th location. The 4th location would be strictly a drive-through concept for Bodo's. I think that 4th location would crush it. I think that 4th location doesn't even have to be in Class A real estate. It can be in, Class C type of real estate because we will drive to Bono's. It's that kind of destination brand. So they're closing the drive-throughs. It's going to be takeout only, no inside dining for now. And lastly, they're going to open a 4th location that's drive-through only when the 4th one is open. I want to play 2 items, 2 pieces of sound from yesterday's edition of Real Talk. The first one is, they're both from Wilson Ritchie, to be exact. The first one is on Wilson Ritchie talking about owning the real estate as a restaurant owner. He has done that with Cafe Frank. Cafe Frank was one of the 3 restaurants he opened during COVID. Cafe Frank, the Milkman's Bar, and South Central. Cafe Frank is on the downtown mall. Judah, cue up that sound. I'll count you into it. Wilson Ritchie, Charlottesville's most prolific restaurateur, on owning the real estate as well as owning the restaurant. Judah, in 3, 2, 1.
Experience.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Have you considered, or maybe you already have, getting into the real estate ownership game? And the reason I'm bringing this up
Yeah.
is when a developer, has an idea for a project, I would think the first people they're going to target for this project is people like you, who have this it factor, this cool factor, who can create brands that are super cool and then make people want to flood to that new development because of the Milkman's Bar and River and the Breakfast of Champions.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how many times I've taken friends to Dairy Market. The first place we go is to the Milkman's Bar. We get a Breakfast of Champions. We see your team make that thing. It's
Yeah,
like
it's awesome.
10 minutes. It's
Yeah.
this the pomp and circumstance of it is amazing.
Yeah, River's so creative.
He's so creative.
He's amazing. Yeah.
I mean, so Andy, a perfect example is a friend of ours, Andy McClure.
Yeah.
Citizen Burger Bar
Love Andy.
Richmond. Just bought the building
Yeah.
where Citizen Burger Bar Richmond is.
That's awesome. Good
Yeah,
for
it
him.
is awesome.
Yeah.
So have you considered, are you doing that already?
I'm doing that already.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Okay, which ones?
Yeah.
Can I ask?
So where Cafe Frank is,
Okay.
I own that building.
Fantastic.
So, yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah, that's
That
the
is-
swan song. That's where I want to be the old man polishing glasses,
Or coming out of the-
or coming out.
You bought the building.
Yeah, yeah.
That is awesome.
So yeah, that's been awesome. That's
Good.
That's where I want to retire.
Good for you.
Okay.
Ownership is where it's at if you can do it.
Oh, 100%. I mean, you realize at the end of the day, especially with the popularity of restaurants, it's not like it was in the old days. It's not as much of a business anymore. It's your own creation.
Sure.
And people aren't buying your creation anymore. They have their own creation. So people don't buy restaurants, not that I've seen, like they used to when I was getting into it in '98, I guess.
Now they're just buying leases and equipment.
That's right, exactly. So if so your whole career, I mean, you're making the money you're making while you're working, but you've got nothing at the end of the day, really, unless you can own the building.
I did not know that he owned the building that Cafe Frank was located in, Wilson Ritchie. I did not know he owned that building. That was formerly the Splendora's location. Now Splendora's Gelato. Now Cafe Frank, a fabulous little eatery. Andy McClure, friend of the program, purchased the building where Citizen Burger Bar Carytown is located. Citizen Burger Bar has a location in Carytown in Richmond. Andy McClure bought that building. Wilson's got the building on the downtown mall where Cafe Frank is. Adam Frazier is the owner of the Local and Junction restaurant in Belmont. Adam Frazier owns the real estate where the Local is at, owns that building, that restaurant as well. He also owns the building where Junction is. Not only does he own Junction, but he owns the real estate as well. It's a smart move. Your restaurant business is paying rent to your real estate business in that scenario. I also asked Wilson Ritchie about the downtown beer garden concept. Having an open air container where on the downtown mall, from the Ting Pavilion to the former Ice Park spot, something the city could manage to drive incremental tax revenue for the city and make downtown Charlottesville even more of a tourist destination for folks all over the world to visit. The downtown beer garden concept, I'm hugely in favor of. We asked Charlottesville's most prolific restaurateur, Wilson Ritchie, about his take on the downtown beer garden and the positivity it could offer this community. Listen to what he has to say. Judah, if you can play that in 3, 2, 1.
I would love to hear your opinion on that.
Well,
The beer garden guys.
Yeah, as Jerry knows more than anybody, I've been a fan of this for years and years and years. Whenever the city asked me, what more could we be doing, I brought up that idea. It was open air drinking in the mall. Come on, it just makes so much sense. It's going to be a draw for the community. There's ups and downs, but overall, I just think that it would make the area. It would make the downtown mall, or whatever area is able to do it and open to do it, a destination, a cool place to go. It would just add a level of interestingness, that they have in Savannah, they've got in Key West, they have in New Orleans, all the places that do this, are places that are known tourist attractions. Why wouldn't we do that here?
I mean,
it's not hurting anybody.
And it's not foreign to us because kind of the Fridays After 5 is
Sure.
a small version.
Tom's a good example.
Tom, there you go.
Yeah.
Perfect. Tom.
Well, and think what it would do for even a Fridays After 5 thing. If you could have bands all up and down the mall
cool.
and turn the whole mall into, like you start at one end, you watch that band, then you move up a little bit. There's, a really cool band playing there. You got a beer in your hand, and you're just
Be amazing.
Well,
it'd be awesome.
So I'll play devil's advocate.
Yeah.
So what's the downside?
I
From an
think the
elected official, he or she's going to make this decision hopefully on Monday.
Yeah.
What's the downside? And what
I-
can we do to alleviate that?
Yeah, I don't know what they think the downside is. I mean, is it public drunkenness? Because you could do that anyway. There's nothing where you're holding your beer doesn't keep you from getting any more or less drunk. I don't know. That's the only downside I could.
Is there an additional cost to the jurisdiction, to the city?
Yeah.
Well, here's the downside, and this is what the mayor said in the meeting. So there is an additional cost for management. That additional cost would easily be recuperated by an uptick in the meals tax and the lodging tax for people coming.
And plus, you have to pay for a cup, right, or something.
The mayor has said the downside is it may not create diversity downtown. And I will agree with her that it probably will not create diversity downtown, but I will counter that point by saying the incremental revenue that comes from the beer garden on the downtown mall, that revenue can be allocated or earmarked for diversity purposes in the city of Charlottesville. So hopefully we as elected officials think next step or big picture and not just things in a silo.
So I'm probably going to get myself into a little bit of trouble.
That's what she says is the only downside.
I'm going to get myself into a little trouble right now. So to put that,
You got two counselors watching right here. Just a heads up.
That's okay.
Giving you a heads up.
I understand the rationale, right? And I've always defended the elected officials when I sit in this seat because it's a hard job to do, right?
Sure,
it's just
absolutely.
super hard to do. I've been doing it for 35 years. I know what it takes to do that. But it's kind of back to the conversation about what I'm passionate about is the missing middle and affordable housing. If we don't do anything, what we know for sure is going to happen is more folks like the three of us are going to be moving in here. So the thing is, if they don't do anything, it's going to happen anyway. This lack of diversity from our perspective, is going to happen anyway. This opportunity brings in incremental income so that it could be used to maybe give to affordable housing nonprofits, right?
Yeah, that's how she's got to look at it.
Yeah.
All right, that's Wilson Ritchie. A lot of respect for that guy, a lot of respect for Bellamy Brown. And that's today's show. That's a Wednesday for the I Love Seville show. If you have a topic you want us to consider, to analyze, to chitter-chatter about, send us a DM, hit us up on Twitter. This show airs on every social media platform known to mankind, and it's archived on iloveseville.com. We thank Dr. Wagner of Scott Wagner Integrated Medicine for being a part of the show. Dr. Wagner and his team absolutely have your back at Scott Wagner Integrated Medicine. You guys have a good afternoon. What's Barking Local at 3 p.m. with Patty Zeller. Take care.